Hello, I'm your Dungeon Master, Jmar, and this is my storybook telling of our journey through the Dungeon and Dragons adventure of the Dragon of Icespire Peak. We last left our adventurers in an ancient chamber echoed with the sound of their footsteps as they approached the colossal figure of a dwarven god statue. His eyes were fixed on the crimson jewel that he clutched in his fist as if guarding it from any intruders. Sinriel, our half-elf warlock, felt a strange attraction to the gem. He told the group that he would look after it and keep it safe. He snatched it from the statue's grasp, and then he cried out in pain as the gem scorched his flesh and burrowed into his palm, leaving a smell of flesh burning. He looked at his palm in horror, realizing that he might have just unleashed a terrible curse, but the panic calmed down inside once it all set in. As our adventurers lay down on the cold floor, resting and exhausted from the day's events, they had learned so much, seen so much, and faced so much. They felt a surge of energy coursing through their veins as they replayed the battles and felt more experienced and more powerful. Eminence, the sorcerer with the silver tongue, suddenly got up and announced that he had to leave. He said he had an urgent matter to settle with the Thieves Guild, and that he would meet them again at Nomengard. He gave them a sly smile and snuck off through the temple alone. What was he up to? Did he have a hidden agenda? Was he working for someone else? As our heroes split up to explore the temple, mapping out its secrets for Helia, who had hired them through Imminence, Zavad, the curious monk, opened a door and found a skeleton lying on the floor. It was clad in fine armor and weapons, but they looked untouched by time. And this was no dwarf either, but a human. Perhaps an adventurer who had ventured into the temple alone? But how did he die? There were no signs of violence on his bones. Zavad shrugged it off and decided to loot the corpse. As he reached for the skeleton, he felt a sudden jolt of pain. He was swallowed by an invisible force, and he quickly realized what had killed this adventurer. A gelatinous cube that had been waiting for its prey. He struggled to free himself, but it was useless. He felt the acid burning into his skin and suffocating him and blurring his vision. He screamed, but no one could hear him. He was doomed. While Zavad panicked, thinking that nobody could hear his screams, Jarvan did hear something and bursted into the room, just as he saw Zavad trapped inside of a transparent cube of gelatinous ooze, dissolving Zavad slowly. He reached out with his hand to grab him, but recoiled in agony as the acid burned his skin. He quickly drew his bow and fired a volley of arrows at the cube, hoping to pierce its slimy membrane. The arrows only made small cuts into the cube, and some of them got stuck in the gooey mass. Traumakar, the druid, shifted into a spider and shot a web at the cube, aiming for Zavad's hand. He was lucky enough to hit it, and he pulled with all of his might as Zavad felt a tug on his hand, and he followed the web, escaping the cube's grasp. Jarvan then reached down and grabbed Zavad and switched places with them, taking his place on the front line, but the cube was not done yet. It moved forward and then engulfed Jarvan before he could react. He felt the acid seeping into his body, suffocating him. The others fought desperately to free him and destroy the cube, but it seemed invincible. Sinriel, the half-elf, felt a surge of power in his hand. He looked down and saw the red gem glowing brightly, pulsing with energy. He felt the surge of power building up in his fist, as if the gem was trying to burst out of his skin. He had no idea what to do, but he sensed it was dangerous. He tried to suppress it at first, to keep it under control, but it was too strong. He felt a burning sensation in his palm, and a red light shining through his fingers. He couldn't hold it back any longer. He decided to extend his arm towards the cube and unleash a torrent of fire from his hand. The cube ignites with a sudden flash, engulfing the flames within his translucent body. It quivers and it shakes as it struggles to contain the inferno. Then, with a deafening blast, the gelatinous cube bursts into 1,000 slimy fragments, showering the surroundings with green goo. As the cube explodes, Jarvan emerges from the splattered remains of the green goo, his body coated in ooze. He looked at his companions with a pained expression, his eyes watering and his lips blistering. He feels a searing sensation in his chest and his throat, as if he had swallowed molten lava. He staggers and falls to his knees, coughing in the corrosive slime that had filled his lungs. Zavad watches him with sympathy, grateful that his mask had shielded him from such a fate. After scouring the temple for every secret, every treasure, they finally step out of the dark entrance. There, they spot Dazzlin and Norbis, who had been anxiously debating whether to follow the brave adventurers inside to check if they're okay. The sight of the party fills them with relief and gratitude, and they rush to greet them with warm words and hugs. The group urges them to leave the perilous place, warning them that there could still be dangers inside that they yet to discover, and the white dragon that lurks from the outside. But Dazzlin and Norbis are too curious and eager to explore the temple for themselves. They do thank our heroes for their help and bid them a farewell. They stand back and watch our group walk into the sunset. Our heroes had hoped to leave this place behind and enjoy a peaceful sunset and a well-needed rest. But fate had other plans. As they were heading towards the only exit, they spotted a horde of orcs and a massive ogre marching towards the gate. They quickly ducked behind the rubble and debris, hoping to remain unnoticed by the savage invaders. They whispered among themselves, trying to come up with a strategy to escape, or to fight this new threat. The ogre loomed over them, a hulking mass of muscle and fury. Behind it, a horde of orcs swarmed into the cave, cutting off any escape. The party was trapped, outnumbered, and outmatched. Sid knew they had to act fast. He whispered to his companions, "We need to strike first. A sneak attack might give us some edge." Mayhem nodded and casted Thaumaturgy, making the cave walls shake and rumble. The orcs looked around, confused and scared. Sid was about to launch his attack when a familiar voice rang out. "Brother, I've been working on something. Let me try this." He turned and saw Saldana, his sister and spectral spirit, floated towards the ogre. She smiled and winked at him, then flew into the ogre's body. The ogre's eyes flashed white for a moment, then Saldana took control. She swung her massive club, smashed an orc's skull, sending blood and brains flying everywhere. She roared out and charged into the orc's rank, causing chaos and panic. Sin and the others watched in awe, then seized the opportunity and followed Saldana's lead and attacked the orcs with renewed vigor. Sin once again holds up his hand, ready to unleash a blast of fire from his gem, hoping to incinerate the orcs like it did the gelatinous cube earlier. But this time his aim was a bit off, and the flame missed their mark, instead drawing the attention of the enemy, who charges at the party with rage and hate. Traumakar acted quickly, transforming into a direwolf where he positioned himself in front of his friends, blocking the doorway with his massive body. He snarled and showed his fangs, ready to face the orcs. He was soon surrounded by his foe, but he did not flinch. He fought with courage and ferocity, biting and clawing at the orcs. He was determined to protect his party no matter the cost. Zavad the monk saw his chance and sprang into action. He ran out the doorway using his incredible speed and agility. He moved like a blur, striking the orcs with his quarterstaff and fists. He hit them with such force and precision that they fell to the ground one by one. He darted from orc to orc, never staying in one place for too long. He was a whirlwind of death, and the orcs could not stop him. The party watched in awe as Zavad slaughtered many orcs with his martial prowess. The team was inspired by their comrades' bravery and skill. They worked together in perfect harmony, using their unique abilities to defeat the orcs. Zavad's fists were like hammers, smashing the orcs' bones and skulls. Mayhem's melodies were like a spell, enchanting and deadly. Jarvan's arrows were like needles, piercing the orcs' eyes and hearts. Sin's sword was like a razor, slashing and stabbing flesh and guts of the orcs. Traumakar's bites were like scissors, cutting the orcs' throats and limbs. The party fought as one, united in a common purpose, to end the orcs' menace, and they did. They emerged victorious, covered in blood and glory. The dwarves were shaken by the sight of the carnage. Now deciding to leave, realizing how lucky they were to have met this party, who saved them from a similar fate, but decided to stay with the group for this night, grateful for their protection. They all settled down for a much needed rest after a long and exhausting day. The adventurers were weary from their previous battles and knew they had a long journey ahead of them. They hoped for a peaceful sleep, but they also knew that dangers could lurk in the shadow. They slept with one eye open, ready for anything. As dawn approached, our heroes said goodbye to Dazzlin and Norbus. The dwarves thanked our party for their help and wished them well in their adventures. The party then set off to their next destination in Nomengard, eager to continue their adventure. Along the way, they talked about how they fought together and how much they enjoyed each other's company. They also admired the beauty of the fall day as they traveled the road. The sun was shining, the leaves were changing color, and the air was crisp and fresh. They felt happy and hopeful, ready for whatever challenges awaited them. After many hours of travel, the group finally reached Nomengard, the home of the ingenious gnomes. They hoped to find some of their famed magical items that could aid them in their fight against Cryovane, the dreaded white dragon. They had heard stories of the gnomes' inventions such as flying machines, clockwork contraptions, and explosive devices. They wondered what wonders they would see and what secrets they would learn. Hey, if you've enjoyed watching our content, don't forget to smash that like button, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe bell. You can also catch us live on Twitch every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern to watch the live session of Dragon of Icespire Peak with myself and my wife, who plays as Mayhem. And if you missed that live stream, don't worry, we'll upload the playthroughs on YouTube every Wednesday. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you.